and welcome back to my history homework. Today, I'm going to be talking about 1920s fashion, which, fun fact about me, is actually my favorite era ever, and I really love 1920s fashion. And so I'm really happy that it falls under the category of arts and culture, which we had just talked about this past week. Before we move any further, I just want to mention that we will only be talking about women's fashion today. The main reason I chose women's fashion is because, one, I am a woman myself, and this interests me way more than men's fashion does, and two, women's fashion seems to be more fluid from era to era. If you look through many different eras, it completely changes, while looking at men's fashion, it mainly stays the same, and nothing really changes. Hemlines don't move, we don't get new, bigger skirts, we don't get ruffles, we don't get different colors. Most things stay the same in men's fashion. Of course, I could be wrong. This is just my opinion. This isn't facts. So, please don't hate me for that. Now, to set the stage, the 1920s was all about jazz, the Harlem Renaissance, the 19th Amendment, and one of the bad sides, Prohibition. Due to this revival sort of era, many people decided to stray away from the past fashion trends of the Victorian era. If we are to quickly look back on some of these fashion trends, that would be the very tight corset with very tiny waistlines, very big busts, maybe even bustle skirts, bonnets, jewelry that is very fanciful, long curled hair, and lots of ruffles. The new fashion trends of the 20s were supposed to represent a modern era for a modern woman. It's supposed to represent them freeing themselves with the 19th Amendment and freeing themselves from the shackles of the Victorian era. Now let's quickly talk about the designers of this era, and I'm gonna pop some pictures up over here of their different kinds of clothes. First, I want to talk about Sonia Delaney. She made many of her fabrics after Art Deco patterns and Surrealist poems. That's hard to say. This often included many geometric shapes with bold colors. Her dresses were known as the poem dresses. Another famous, this time male designer, known for his outdoor women's fashion is Jean Poitou. He often favored geometric shapes that were natural and comfortable for women. Fun fact, he's also the person who popularized the cardigan. One of the pieces he is most known for is a daring, sleeveless, knee-length tennis dress that he made for the tennis player Suzanne Lenglen. I believe I said that right. Might be wrong. The last designer that I want to talk about is Gabrielle Coco Chanel. Chanel led the corset-free bust trend, and she also led the no hyper waistline. This, of course, brought about a more masculine look that she is more known for. And she also popularized trousers. So thank you, Coco Chanel. Now let's talk about some famous icons of the 1920s that really helped push these fashion trends forward. The first icon I like to talk about is Colleen Moore. She was known for her iconic bob that many women copied in the 1920s. You've often seen this type of bob in many 20s pictures. The second icon I'd like to talk about is Dorothy McHale. She was known for her androgynous look. During this time, many women favored androgyny because it was completely different than the hyper-feminine Victorian era that they were previously in. Dorothy's biggest staple was her wearing a tuxedo on the set of The Crystal Cup. This made many women want to follow her trend and wear tuxedos as well, and she looks wonderful in it, I must say. And the final icon I'd like to talk about is none other than Zelda Fitzgerald. If you do not know who she is, or you have not read a famous 1920s classic by F. Scott Fitzgerald, this is his wife. F. Scott Fitzgerald was the author of The Great Gatsby. He often described how his wife inspired him to write and how she was the original American flapper. This was not because of her looks, though. It was more because of her personality. She was creative and inspiring to be around. She also was very independent, like many flappers were seen to be. Let's talk about some of the main trends of the 1920s era, which I am thinking most of you were probably waiting for. Or one of you, because I know only my teacher watches these videos. Hi, Mrs. Hall. Of course, we have to talk about the biggest 1920s trend that everyone knows about, the short flapper dress. This dress was often cut at the knees, and it sometimes had mini glittery sequins, or you could also have tiny little ribbons or strings hanging down, and it was meant to show a freedom of movement. Another big trend is striking Art Deco designs. We also can't forget about closed hats that would fit to the head and bobbed hairstyles. Because this was a brand new century and a brand new era, many people started leaning more towards boyish fashions. Also, this kind of went with the trend of how trousers were more popular. This look, by the way, was called a garcon or garcone. I'll put the spelling here. That was the look's name for a boyish look. Of course, even if you have these very flamboyant, very big, extravagant flapper dresses and other things like that, you have to have day wear. And they did have casual day wear. Their shoes were often T-strap shoes. Their statement jewelry was very subtle, often pearls. A big part of designing clothes was the drop waist. This was to give you a very narrow and straight look, more masculine. Women also wore decorative hairbands that could be beaded or have feathers attached. This is when pants and bathing suits were introduced, thankfully, so now we can wear bathing suits at the beach and have pants to walk around in instead of just skirts. Stockings were no longer worn by themselves, they were now worn with garters to hold them up, and they were made shorter. You could also have them longer, up to your thigh, but many women just wore them above the knee. This was when corsets went away and bras were introduced. Of course, these were mostly jerry-rigged type of bras, and corsets were still used if you had a bigger bust, but this is when they were finally introduced. Undergarments were no longer chemises, and instead they were a romper-looking type of deal. You often had shorts at the bottom with a nice cambasole on top. And this is also when we got the introduction to more modern makeup. This is when we started to see mascara and more eyeliner, darker lipsticks, darker eyeshadow, not just paling the face and adding color to the cheeks and the lips. A lot of this was more from my knowledge because I love this era so much and I like to collect items of clothing that are from this era or look like they're from this era. So all of this might not include everything that was within the era, and I can't include everything that was within the era because even though most women like to wear bobbed hairstyles, that doesn't mean that women didn't have long hair as well. Anything could have happened in this era. This is just what I found after doing a little bit of research and throwing in my own knowledge. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope you enjoyed the lovely pictures and talking about fashion with me. I hope you're staying safe and healthy in this time, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you so much for watching.